And a very warm welcome to this episode of Learning Horizon on learning communities. Learning Horizon is a series dedicated to reimagining learning, communicating, and collaborating in the digital workplace. What is possible? What could be done differently to ignite creativity and performance? I'm Gaelle Watson. I am your host, and today I'm so happy to have with me Fiona McBride, who we've been knowing for over 10 years now. And Fiona herself has been a learning consultant for over 20 years, and she's an incredible facilitator. Fiona has a unique superpower to spark powerful conversations in groups of all possible size and in all possible environment. She's the co-founder of L&D Co-work, a friendly and informal community of learning L&D professional. She's also involved of managing the back channel of learning technologies conferences, sharing on social media some of the information that are discussed in the conferences. And I would highly recommend everybody listening to subscribe to a newsletter called Facilitation Inspirations, and the link will be posted below on the page. She's also a contributor for Training Journal. Gosh, Fiona, you are busy. Thank you so much for your time, and welcome on to Learning Horizons.
Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased to be here. So thank you so much for asking me.
That is an absolutely pleasure. First, would you like to tell us a little bit about what triggered your interest for learning communities and how it all gets started?
Yeah, I think it's quite simple, really. I'm just really interested in how people learn, like how people gather, how they come together, to have dialogue, to explore ideas, and to collaborate. So it was quite a simple. It's just that real genuine interest in people and how they learn and how they learn together. Because
And
community is a together thing, isn't it?
absolutely, it's always been, isn't it? But how would you define actually what is exactly learning communities?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because sometimes I think often this is happening and people are within learning communities without putting a label on it. But if we had to describe it, which I think is a helpful place to begin today, I would say it's a group of people who share a common interest in a subject, and they come together to learn through collaboration, through reflection, through sharing of knowledge and experiences.
That is, yeah, that sounds like some very functional definition. So thank you very much. Um, when it works, and maybe we're gonna unpack a little bit what makes a learning community work, and when sometimes it doesn't. But when it works, what do you think are the key benefits for all the participants and themselves and potentially their role or their organization?
Sure. Um, well, like you say, it can be in different contexts, right? Learning communities can be in different contexts, and we might even come on to that later a little bit more. But we're thinking, aren't we, from that internal organization and like networking perspective, aren't we? So in
Yes.
my thoughts with that are that it's about strength in numbers. It's the benefits are like it's collaboration over being individual. It's that two heads are better than one kind of mentality. And I think a lot of people find learning is effective for them when they're learning socially and alongside and together with other people. So it's a relational kind of process, and it's not just kind of content consumption, you know? So the benefits are really wide because then especially within an organization, you're sharing knowledge, you're sharing experience. You can potentially kind of start to work cross-functionally, couldn't you? If you had managers or individuals or leaders within different parts of an organization coming together to learn in a learning community, then the benefit could be that sharing of knowledge and therefore that growing of understanding a lot wider than their specific parts of the business they work in. So I feel like I'm getting on my soapbox now because I think it can be really impactful and effective when it's done well.
Yes, and we'll go in a second into what works and what doesn't work. What I really liked about what you said, and it's something that I've been reflecting upon for a little while, is that there is a superpower on actually verbalizing your challenges and actually verbalizing your solutions. So this kind of exchange, actually of putting words, is very powerful to actually identify a process or a solution or a challenge. Simply just putting in word the challenge is actually the starting point to unpacking it, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think so. I think therefore, because of that, an effective learning community or quite a true learning community is one that needs to have a level of trust and understanding, I think.
Yes.
Because it's tough, isn't it, to be vulnerable or to say, I have a knowledge gap or I have an experience gap or I'm not sure on X or Y, and therefore, can you help me? Like, can the people around me, support me? I think that's like a big thing for a lot of people to say. Now, I sit in a maybe quite a simple mindset of we can always learn, like continuous improvement should just be everywhere all the time. Like, so we can always learn something new, context change, environment changes, industry changes, regulation changes. So therefore, having a gap in my knowledge and understanding is fine, because if I can acknowledge that and then ask for help and support and be open to learning, then I'm winning, and surely everyone else is. But then you might say that's a bit of a simple view.
But it's true, it works very well. I think like the way we are in, you and I, in various communities that are outside a political and hierarchical system, and it's probably a little bit more challenging when you are in internal community, because you will have people that you would feel embarrassed to demonstrate that you didn't know something, and that's something you've come across.
Yeah, and I really respect that, and I do understand it. So that's why I say I do think, my view obviously is quite, how I'm wired, I guess, in that with that mindset. But when I work in organizations and I'm working with, say, managers or leaders, if I'm doing like a management development program or something like that, it does take a little while for people to open up, and I get that. Like I do understand it and I respect it. But we know that like learning organizations that are up for kind of constantly learning and changing and learning and changing, then can open themselves up to be a lot more a lot more effective and have real shifts. Does that make sense?
So yes, Fiona, absolutely. You're talking about creating this safe place where people can really share, and that leads me to my next questions. You were talking just here now about the fact that members of a community sometimes take a little while to actually feel like they're in a trusted environment. So how do you start? Do you facilitate at the beginning? What's your thought process when you start this kind of community?
Yes. So I think sometimes, I mean, it'll always be context dependent. Like we say, context is everything, don't we? Like that's the thing we've been saying for a long time in our work. So we should always be matching where a group is at or where a community is at, of course. But often I find that kind of light facilitation can be really helpful to help people to settle, to help people start to build connection within that community, to build trust, to find their rhythm with it, and understand the kind of understand like why they're there and what they need from it, and then to yeah, to then help them to open up. And so that might be that I'll be putting in place some lightly kind of facilitated conversation kind of starters, or, helping people to make introductions, helping people to explain like who they are, what they do, what their current challenges are, what their current successes, recent and current successes have been, to help people settle in. And it doesn't have to be too heavy-handed. It can just be very light touch, because I think sometimes people like to be guided at first, don't they? And then that gives them a bit of breathing space to settle in as they find their feet. Yeah. So I think that can be very helpful.
So do you think a little bit the facilitator as a role model in some sorts, like, setting up the tone and,
Yeah.
how to be yourself in that space?
Yes, 100%. And I think that has like kind of a lot of little layers to it, doesn't it? Because there's something about actions speak louder than words. So kind of modeling that yourself, but also paying attention and noticing and checking in with people. So a lot of the kind of learning communities or groups that I've worked alongside or supported, when they're in person, when they're gathering in person, to regularly meet, one could argue that's easier, but I do sometimes think it's harder. There's a lot more, isn't there, to kind of that self-management piece and settling in and feeling comfortable with maybe new people. And then online, one could argue it's harder or it's easier because you're kind of on a device, or you're typing
Yep.
into a group kind of chat space, wherever that may be. Yeah.
That yes, the duality between face to face and online is quite interesting. There's pros and cons, and also in the space of learning horizons, often people don't have the choice. They're gonna have to be online because they are in like different continents around the world, and they will not be traveling to meet up. So we can argue that sometimes there is no choice whatsoever, but it is also the fact that it's easier maybe to pause and reflect when you're in digital environment, isn't it? Sometimes you can actually go back to the question asked an hour or two later, so you had time to digest.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then people can hopefully come to those questions or come to that kind of learning space when they're ready. So like you said, if they've had time to kind of think through the question, or they've had time to reflect on what their response might be, then they're coming back to it when it's right for them. And so I love tech, and I also love like in person. I've got this, real 50-50 of both. So yeah, it can be really powerful. And I think nowadays, would it be fair to say people are quite used to being kind of online and building connection through kind of technology, because it enables us to be more connected. So obviously, as long as the balance is right, we're not here to talk about a kind of balance of using
Yes.
technology, but as long as the right balance is there for everyone, then I think it can be a great thing.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Just before we move on to possibly another area of the learning communities, I was thinking, do you think there are size that works better than others?
I think again, I have to pull out that context is everything kind of response, because I do think it depends on the purpose. I really do. I think a community kind of group size really does depend on what it's for. And how often maybe people are coming into it or utilizing it or being, engaging within it. Um, if I put my kind of lens on it as it's part of maybe a development program or a team development program, then I think you need input, and you need people ready to share, but you also need to be heard, and for people to hear you. So sizing wise of that, 15, 20, 25 people could be a really lovely size kind of learning community space. I think if it's like networks like a learning community kind of within a network, and it could have many, right? Because then people will be coming to it at all different points and dipping in and out. So therefore it could handle quite a lot of connections, because not everyone will be online at the same time. And not, we used to have a wonderful learning community through Twitter when it used to be a lovely space to be in. We would have hundreds, I mean, I never counted, but I would have said hundreds, if not a couple of thousand of people that over the space of a year would be involved in our kind of learning, facilitation, conversations, asking questions of each other, sharing ideas, helping people problem solve. And that would have been a lot of people.
And it was very open. And we talk about trust. That's, and once again, slightly diverging it, but I think it's a good example of trust. It used to be a trusted space, very open, where we all
Yeah.
shared, and that's, how I met you actually,
Yes.
following some of the LND hashtag on Twitter.
Yeah.
And going through the process of being a lurker, and then slightly liking things, and then starting asking questions, and then evolving into getting confident into being part of the conversations, which is also something quite essential. And that was something you were saying about the light touch facilitations, getting people bringing up the confidence of being part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's really a nice reminder, actually, you saying that about with that kind of the Twitter example about like kind of lurking and listening and watching and then eventually contributing. I mean, look, and then we're here now, right? And we see each other probably a good few times a year, and we message each other for help sometimes. So I think that's a nice reminder about learning communities, is that we don't want to make assumptions about how people necessarily should be, because if it's a true learning community and it's a space for people to utilize as they need it, then everyone's needs might be slightly different. So somebody might want to be around the edges and tuning in, listening, paying attention, being reflective, for a little while before they then start to maybe contribute more regularly. And then the person that's jumping in there straight away, all the questions and giving loads of answers, that's great. But there's room for everyone, I think, in a true learning community.
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's probably why it's probably a long game, isn't it? Learning community. You can't
Potentially.
just measure impact in
No.
like 3 weeks or 3 months.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it's something that's needs time to settle in, to become established, and then to build and grow. And I don't think we're talking years necessarily, though there are learning communities out there that have been going for years, of course. But if we're talking organizationally, kind of the organizational context of it, then I've kind of helped gather kind of learning communities alongside management development programs, or first time manager programs, leadership programs, and they're like maybe 6 to 9 to 12 months. And then in that time, in that duration of time, these learning communities have had time to embed and establish and create that safety and that trust, and then really flourish.
And just going back to what you just said, what are the key ingredients to create safety and trust in a learning community?
Oh yeah, I know you've had like a whole podcast on these things, don't you? But in a nutshell, I think it's about being very clear about the intentions of the group in the first place. I think that's the key thing.
Mm-hmm.
So having that really openly discussed and explored. And then maybe for some groups, again, depending who are coming into it, some kind of ground rules or kind of housekeeping points. And I don't like assumptions. So I always kind of make sure we check in on everything. So you and I might speak, and I know I can trust you and you will keep things confidential. But I think it's always good sometimes with newer groups to actually just say the words out, have that kind of spoken and said out loud. I think that's really important. And then ask people what they need from it. So I know we talk about, we say, do learning communities need to be facilitated or not, left, to be free? I think a facilitation point is definitely helping the group to collaborate, to agree what they need from it and how it will work, and what a helpful learning community would look and sound like for everybody.
Yes, brilliant. Yes, sorry. I know you're referencing the previous episode of Learning Horizon on psychological safety, and it's absolutely essential to bring it into a learning community. But yes, absolutely, there is a starting point, isn't it? In the same way that a team has to gel, the learning community has to know where they stand, what they can and what they cannot do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's always really good to put that out to the group and to facilitate that discussion to help everybody, kind of get on the same page with like what it's there for. And I think what can be helpful sometimes is to say what it is there for, but then also acknowledge what it's not there for. Because especially if it's one within an organization, there'll be other spaces within organizations for other things, other maybe issues that arise or other places to discuss certain challenges. So it can be helpful to say what it is for, but also then what it isn't
What
for.
That yeah, that's great. I mean, isn't it like an expression in English thing that's being clear is being kind or something like that? And some
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And moving maybe a little bit more on the tech side, Fiona,
Yeah.
um, do you have any like example suggestions, recommendations? What is a nice digital community looking like
Oh,
in 2025?
there are so many things out there. I feel like we're super lucky that there are so many things out there, but also then it can be quite overwhelming. So I think for me, I like to keep things simple. And I think when it comes to tech, we should maybe pay attention to where people are already. So in an organization, it might be that there's a Slack team that's been set up. So it could be like Slack channels that are used to support the learning community. You might be using like Microsoft Teams. So it could be that there could be a space created in there. I know some organizations use like Jabber and Yammer and different products like that. I must say, I do like a WhatsApp community as well. I think if I had to pick, I'd be like Slack and WhatsApp would be my two places. But in some cases, LinkedIn groups can work well. Again, all of these things have kind of boundaries, don't they? They have, you can invite people into it. They can be private and closed groups that the people that need to be in there can access and then confidently hold those useful, important conversations and have those like questions that are asked and the problem solving that happens and the sharing of documents and pictures and images and things that can help people learn in the context that they're learning in.
And you're making a very good point. What is going to be shared on the platform? It can be just questions with answers like words, but it can also be a lot more documents, videos,
Yeah.
best practice, and the platform will have their own limitations, and it has to be checked before and thought through before. So that's a very good, helpful tip. Um,
Mm.
the other thing I would like to say that it's a personal experience. As much as Twitter used to be the place to be for us in L&D, and I found years I really struggle intellectually with the fact that things would come in random order. It might be probably said about something about my mindset. But I like a LinkedIn post with the comments underneath, and that just works with my, I would say, mental structures, is that everything is kind of boxed in one place, and I found it a little bit less stressful. But I know you and others used to love actually um, the the way things were absolutely disorganized in Twitter. I mean,
Yeah.
disorganized may not be the right word, but like uh, um, uh, not structured at all,
Yeah.
and you totally embraced it.
I know, yeah. And I'm laughing because I'm normally I am very organized and I like things in order, but I do like the randomness sometimes of some spaces I'm in where I'm in to learn, like in those, those learning communities that I'm part of. Because I think, and this will maybe be kind of dependent on the structure of a learning community or the size of it, but I sometimes see it as, that day I decide to sit down and like kind of pop into it and have a look and see what people are chatting about. Like I could just maybe sit with a cup of tea for 10 minutes and see what's being shared and talked about. And that can be enough. I don't feel like I have to kind of go back and catch up from the last time I was in there necessarily, because it's that point in time when I feel like I'm in the right mindset to sit and dip in and say, right, what are people talking about? What are people sharing? Are there new ideas I could pick up? And are there, new people or concepts that I could learn from and about? So I think I sit in the like it's just in time when you need it,
Yep.
because then you have more headspace for it, maybe.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So all fantastic, ideas and different preferences, and it's okay.
Yeah.
When we talk about people, we talk about preferences as well, and there is no one fit all solutions, otherwise it will be way too easy, right, and not
Yeah.
fun enough. And one last thing, because we are already at the end, time flies, we might have to have like a sequel on learning communities as well. But I was just wondering, what is maybe the best things you've learned in one of your learning communities, Fiona? Or something that's really resonated with you through your experience of definitely over 10 years in learning communities, as I've been following
Oh
you
my
for
word. Gaelle, what a question. We definitely
oh
part two now. Okay. I think for me, the biggest, it's a theme, like the biggest takeaway for me has been how much I've learnt about facilitation and how much I have um uh, the different perspectives and the different styles of how you can facilitate groups of people and how you can support them. So the communities that I've been in, I've been so fortunate to have people so generously sharing methodology, tools, techniques that have really given me so much kind of further insight and deeper knowledge and understanding, which has enabled me to pass that on when I do my work for my clients and when I offer kind of support into the learning community that we have.
Yes, and thank you for sharing. And I just want to say that absolutely, L&D is a wonderful space where people are incredibly generous. And so maybe there is like other industry where it's a little bit less the case. But I just also wanted to say that for anybody listening, to absolutely follow Fiona's, because if you're looking for ideas on how to engage with people, on making them feel comfortable, I think, Fiona, you're absolutely wonderful at doing this. Prompting people to share in a lovely way that really makes them feel trusted, boost their confidence and make them feel empowered to share their thought. So thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today and for joining us and for sharing all your experience and your expertise. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you so much.
And yes, thank you for listening to us. And as I said, there are going to be resources posted just below. So if you want to go a little bit further in your exploration of learning communities, definitely keep an eye just below the recording. See you soon. Bye.